probably will be running only for an hour and a half as opposed to 2. Thank you. And I'll pass you now to Antonio to explain the rules.
Hi guys, my name's Antonio Brieva. I'm a news editor at Imprint. So each candidate will have 2-minute opening statements. Then that would be followed by 6 questions. Each candidate will have half a minute opening statement, 5 minutes of opening debate, and a half a minute closing statement. And then that would be followed by a 2-minute closing remark by each candidate. For the opening statements, we will give you a 15-second warning when your time is coming up. For the same thing for the half-minute opening statement for each question. And for the 5-minute opening debate, we will be giving you a 30-second warning. For the half-minute closing, we will also be giving you a 15-second warning. Same thing for your final closing remarks. So Stefan will be reading out the first question. We'll start with opening statements from each candidate. And can I ask Dave to start?
Well, thank you very much for coming today. I would have really liked to seen the chairs full because obviously one of the problems in any election is student involvement. And traditionally the number of students who vote has been very low. So we'd like to see that change this time and get you guys involved and get you out there to the polls, regardless of who you vote for. In many cases, you're really letting your parents and your grandparents make all the decisions for you if you don't vote. And so if you don't want them to do that, then get out there and vote. In my case, I'm running on a platform of accessibility. I want to be accessible to, I think this is the most important part of my platform. I want to be accessible to any and all who have any kind of a problem with City Hall. I want to have an open door policy, so if you have a problem, whatever it might be, you come to me and I will try to solve it. If I can't solve it, I'll make sure that you get sent to the person who can solve the problem. There's the conception around that you can't fight City Hall. I don't believe that. I think if you get to the right people at City Hall, you can get things done. I'll also be accountable to the taxpayers for all the dollars I spend. If I'm traveling and doing anything on city business, any money I spend, it'll be an open book. I'm not going to try and hide anything. I'm not going to try and inflate my expense accounts. I'm not going to do any double dipping. I'll be honest and upfront with you on everything I spend. The city has to do a lot of business, infrastructure, construction, all sorts of things that go on, making sure that you have the services you need, and I want to get them to you at a price you can afford. So affordability is the other thing that I will be concerned with. And finally, because I have been in the media for so long, many of you may or may not know that, I've had a 42-year career with the local television station. I'm one of the most well-known faces in all of Southern Ontario, and I will be a great ambassador for the city of Waterloo, and that's one of the main jobs that any mayor has, is to be an ambassador, to sell the city as a good place to come and work and live and play. And I already know a lot of the other politicians around the area, the other mayors, and the local MPPs and MPs, so I think I can be a great ambassador because of the fact that I am well known. So on October 27th, I would ask that you vote for Dave McDonald. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rami Saeed, and for those of you who are already staying awake, thank you for being out here, and those of you who lost you at the whole thing, congratulations. It might be very hard. Like many of you, I'm a pretty young guy. I've always enjoyed politics and have always wanted to get involved, and I've always found it difficult to get involved and to learn about what's going on in the municipality. And one of my goals has always been bridging that gap, trying to make it more accessible to everybody, and actually bring City Hall out of the building and out to the streets and in everyone's homes and in their businesses. Personally, I'm a small business owner, born and raised in the region of Waterloo, live in the city of Waterloo pretty much my entire life. My two businesses, one of them is automotive, and I'm also opening a bar in Uptown Waterloo, and the things I've been trying to do is foster the community and kind of grow how we all communicate. Through my businesses, we've always had an open door policy where we employ people who are generally more intelligent and brighter. And that's my goal as mayor, is to give the power back to the people and let the people who actually know what they're doing in sex actually have the ability to fulfill those engagements. As a leader, we don't know everything. We're not capable of knowing exactly what's going on in every part of the city. And we're not always going to be the brightest person to push forward certain agendas. So the job of leader effectively is to empower other people and let them use their skills, whether it's through education or personal experience, to move our city forward. Many of the problems I hear from students is that they really don't feel part of our community. And to me that's a huge problem because There's 50,000 of you. You guys attribute over $1.3 billion to our economy, and you're as much of Waterloo as anybody else. One of the big problems I hear is people don't like to leave the university area, or they don't feel like they're welcome in certain neighborhoods, or they feel like when they are in certain neighborhoods, they're being pushed out. And that is a problem. So when I look at things such as like managing our city and developing how we grow, I look at things like actually including everybody and having a diverse amount of people together instead of having certain peoples in certain areas. Through this debate, you'll learn a lot more about us, and I hope I can get your vote on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much to the University of Waterloo and the Federation of Students for hosting us here today. It's a great opportunity to get involved and learn more about the municipality that you all live in. I first came here over 30 years ago to attend math at the University of Waterloo, lived at St. Jerome's residence in the basement for my first year, and lived around campus after that. My wife Jan is in the audience today. We both met here studying math, and following school got engaged, married, and tomorrow's our 25th wedding anniversary. So been married, raised our family here, had a great community and career life here. And it's through all those learnings and experience that I want to bring this back to you, the current temporary residents of the city of Waterloo. What I hope you to be is just like I did, where I came here, voted during the election in the 80s, and ended up staying here. And that's why it's important for you to understand that there's a municipality here, the mayor, the councilors, to get out there and vote, because you might end up like me, where you might actually make your home here in Waterloo, and I hope you do. And to do that, I have a 3-point plan to help ensure that Waterloo is a great place to make your permanent home. Number one is rebuilding prosperity. And what that really means is jobs. The things that kept me here when I graduated was a job and a great place to live. And so that's what we need to focus on, is creating or bringing those companies that create jobs here to Waterloo. Second part is to create an effective government. And that's something that we need, is an effective government, one that does things very efficiently and very effectively for the residents. And then finally, developing a vibrant and caring community. And that means having stuff to do in Waterloo. So I spent the majority of my life here. I really hope that you, as students, will ensure that you, or at least consider spending your life here. But for the rest of your time here, I'd like you to vote on October 27th. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me in the back row? Good. My name is Erica. I'm running to be your mayor in the upcoming election on the 27th. And just by way of background, I did sit among you for many years. I was at UW for 6 years. I studied my undergraduate program was philosophy and economics, and then I went on to do a master's in philosophy. After that, I went to Ottawa for 3 years for law school, and I've been a court lawyer for 22 years in our community. For most of that time, I've been representing legal aid clients in our criminal justice system. So I am very aware of the social justice issues that are in our community. Mental health, addiction, youth issues, all of that I've been involved with. I went through university on my own ticket. I'm very aware of the struggles that students are facing. I graduated at the end of my law degree with a $55,000 OSAP bill, which I chipped away at and paid off. But I'm aware of the issues. And what frightens me is, having listened to a lot of students, having listened to the fire department and landlords, is that really, since I was a kid here, not a whole lot has changed in the kind of housing that is available for students. And that alarms me. The other thing that has not changed since I was a student is the accessibility to Grand River Transit. And these, I believe, are safety issues. Not having safe public transit after your last class is an issue for me. The other safety issue that I'm aware of that is a priority is walkability. It's a dangerous time at night to walk. We need to have better lighting to access neighboring communities. My time is up.
Erica, can you wrap up?
I hope to be able to answer more questions.
Thank you. So Now we will be moving to the question portion of the debate. I just remind candidates you will have a half-minute opening statement, and then we will move to an open debate. We'll start with Dave McDonald. Rami.
So the question is, how will you make the city of Waterloo attractive for new graduates and to keep the human capital here?
So the two issues that matter most when trying to keep people here are jobs and community. Part one is jobs. If you don't have employment, there's no point in staying somewhere if you can't afford to live there. You have to have a good amount of jobs that work with your education and can kind of drive what you've learned. But also at the same time, no matter how good a job is, if you don't feel welcome somewhere, you don't feel like you belong, and you're just not happy, it's not going to keep you anywhere. So we have to build up our community to ensure that everybody feels welcome, and to ensure that no matter what ethnic group you're from, what beliefs you have, you feel like you're part of the community, and then ensure that you have a job to sustain your living here.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, the two most important things are having that job, and that's what I want to focus on through my Rebuilding Prosperity Plan, and then having good things to do. You take a look at Paul Maxwell, a graduate of Laurier, put together a little business called Maxwell's Music House. Now it's expanding. It's going to be a little concert hall on University Ave. That's the kind of things that people 25 to 35 need and want to do. And that's something when I was vice chair of Communitech was always a key issue for keeping talent here in Waterloo, was things to do after work hours. Thank you.
I think key to having students stay after graduation is feeling like you are at home when you're here in Waterloo. I think housing is the big issue. We are understanding now at the city that if we have student ghettos, areas where students will feel that they want to go home after their last exam, we're not going to keep you. I would like you to feel at home in Waterloo and put down roots while you are still a student.
I think the secret to job creation is, again, to making Waterloo a place that people want to come to. And right now, I believe that it is a place that people do enjoy coming to, but we can do better. And so redeveloping the uptown to make it a world-class city is certainly one way of making it attractive to outside people who come here. We want to attract new business to come here, whether it's high-tech or whether it's just a regular type business, retail. And so by making Waterloo a very desirable place to visit and live, that's the approach that will create the jobs. Thank you.
We will now be moving to 5 minutes of opening debate. Go for it, Rami.
Thanks, guys. Great. It's the first time we've actually done this for any of our debates, so it's actually nice to be able to, although now it's weird.
Yeah, we never have debates. We just have, you've got
Forums.
1 minute to answer.
Okay, so of everybody here, I know I, for one, Dave McDonald, for example, as well, we've both created jobs, we're both employers, and we're both working to foster that community idea. So my two businesses, one in the automotive sector, although it doesn't cater to many university students, generally the people coming in there, high school graduates and some of them even high school dropouts. But what I've always done in my business is we try to employ people in a way that they can actually survive. We try to pay them a living that will actually get them to be able to afford a mortgage, be able to go out and have fun at night, and that kind of stuff. My other business, it's actually Waterloo's first LGBTQ plus bar. It's going to be right in Uptown Core. And what we found is when working with the community groups around the city, that they were saying there's really nothing for that community anymore. There used to be a bar in Kitchener. The building got redone into a tech business, as most buildings in Kitchener are these days. So they actually got kicked out of their location, and that stopped to exist. So one of the big things is government will never create jobs. Government is never going to create more businesses. That's not the role of government. The role of government is to empower the people in the community to those tasks. So from my experiences, I plan to take what I've done in my business experiences and actually kind of solve the problems that are preventing people from opening businesses. So from my experience, I can tell you, opening a business in Kitchener takes about 10 minutes online. Doing Waterloo, we've been applying for our business license for the past 3 weeks and we still don't have it. And that's kind of the difference that we have there. So I plan to take what I've learned and kind of make the changes to enable people who do want to open businesses to actually have the ability to do so.
And when I was at RIM, RIM became the largest private sector employer of students in all of Canada. And for me, that was key. I did the outreach to students to try and attract them to Research in Motion, to make sure that Waterloo was a great place to live for them while they were here, whether they be continuing co-op students from Laurier or Waterloo or other places. And I also lobbied the provincial government to help increase the attractiveness of employers creating jobs. There's a thing called the co-op tax credit. It was a very low rate set back in the 80s. Was able to lobby the provincial government along with the University of Waterloo to have that increased 6 times, so that would encourage employers to create new jobs so that students could get a job on the resume and aid them when they graduated in getting a full-time job.
Well, no rebuttal. As far as creating jobs go, I've been involved in creating them myself, having owned a business back in the 70s and 80s where I had a retail operation that actually appealed to students because we sold hi-fi gear, and it used to be that the first thing you did when you got your student loan was go buy a new hi-fi for the room. That's not the case so much anymore with technology advancing into iPods and various other ways of getting your music, but in that day, that was certainly something that appealed to the student population, and that created jobs for people who were selling for me. Unfortunately, we got caught in the 22% interest recession of the early 80s, and so I closed the business. But you have to find a need and a niche, and a group of people and myself identified a need in this area a few years ago to have a radio station that does Christian-based programming. And so I'm one of the founders of Faith FM 94.3, the Christian radio station here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And we've expanded that to 3 other cities, 4 in total. We are in London, Woodstock, and Brantford. And we've created about 20 or 25 jobs over the years with that as well. And I agree that the way to create these jobs is to get the people that you know can do the work and let them do the work they do without riding herd over them constantly day after day. I do not micromanage my people. I let them do their jobs. They do it very, very well, whether it be on air, whether it be production of commercials, whether it be writing commercials or selling. I've got some good people on staff, and I let them do their work, and that's the way I would approach things at City Hall, make sure the people on staff know how to do their job. And as Rami has indicated, the getting the business license issue is one that needs to be looked at. And we need to streamline the whole thing at City Hall. Red tape is a huge, huge issue for people. They come to get business done, and they find all kinds of roadblocks. And this is a very big issue, and I think we can work on that one to make sure that people can come into City Hall, get the service they need in a reasonable amount of time at a reasonable cost. So, Rami, I agree with you. We don't create jobs as government, but we make it easier and make it easier for companies to come in. We facilitate it so they can actually set up a business and create the jobs. And university is a big source of people who might want to work in the tech sector or whatever. We also don't want to ignore our sister to the south, Conestoga College, the biggest job creation engine in the region. People go there to learn a trade, and many of them start new businesses. We need to make it easier for them if they want to start a new business as well. So that's what government can do, streamline the process and encourage people to come and settle here and start new businesses.
Can I use my rebuttal to just ask with a show of hands who is looking to stay in Waterloo, to stay here after graduation? Anybody? So, considering? Well, I see students, Waterloo is one of the only cities in the world with a ratio as high as we do of students coming in September to the number of residents we have. We have over 50,000 students coming in every September, and we only have just over 100,000 residents. So I see Waterloo as a very, very lucky city. I see students coming in as job creators. We have a long history in Waterloo of successful startup companies that end up hiring people.
Okay.
So you are the future.
We will now be moving on to the half-minute closing statements on this question. We'll start with Dave Jaworski.
As I mentioned, when I came here to go to University of Waterloo, coming out of here, we were so lucky that there were a lot of jobs available at that time. And that's something I realized that in talking to many of you beforehand, that you're not really sure where you're going to be working. And I think that's something that if we work to attract more employers, to have more jobs here, it would give you a better feeling and better involvement in the city of Waterloo, so you'd want to stay here because there would be great paying jobs here.
Erica?
Thank you. I just want to use this very short time to encourage you students to continue being involved, continue talking, There's a committee of the City of Waterloo called Town and Gown. Their sole purpose is to be a liaison between the city and the university. Join, be a member.
Well, I came here in 1968. I was transferred here working with the Federal Government Weather Service, and I was transferred here to work at the airport, at the weather station. I lived for a while in Kitchener, then I moved to Cambridge, then I moved to Ayr, and about 21 years ago I moved to Waterloo. I love Waterloo. This is the best place to live. So all we need to do is make Waterloo the best place on the planet to live, and the people will flock here to create businesses and create jobs. So that's my plan, is to continue to make Waterloo one of the best places there is to live on earth. Thank you.
So as I touched upon earlier, I myself am a job creator. I've opened businesses and I plan to continue doing that. One of the greatest things we can do is build that community and make it more open and accessible to people. If people enjoy living here, they're going to come and make jobs here. They're going to employ people here, and they're going to stay here. So the biggest issue is building that and fostering that community. If people are happy in Waterloo, we're going to have jobs in Waterloo. If people want to leave Waterloo, the jobs are going to go with them. So it's all about community at the end of the day.
Thank you, candidates. We will now be taking a 1-minute break.
So the mics need to get new batteries, I think, or something needs new batteries. So. Wait 1 second. All right, we're done. No, it's one of the topics we all agree on. We're all doing these jobs in communities, so. Yeah. It's not a
Hello. Hey, we can have our picture.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
We just have that exact
That's what we were just
conversation.
talking about,
The
yeah.
problem is that question, we're all in agreement on everything, so it's hard to attack.
Is it 5 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
It's 5 minutes in total, and it's
Yeah.
for all four, it's 5 minutes. in
Yeah,
total.
just shoot at each other.
Oh, okay, they want to fight.
Guys, if we have to go off topic, go for it.
Okay.
Oh,
act normal.
Act normal. Oh, well. Okay, I'll take my afternoon nap.
Oh, he's awake now.
Oh, he's awake, yeah. Yeah.
So we're now ready to proceed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, maybe not.
Well,
Nope.
Sorry about that. So a primary mode of transportation for a lot of students is cycling. So what we want to know is, how do you plan to improve the safety and infrastructure of cycling in the city and the region?
Erica?
Thank you. I strongly believe that we need to take a global look at the city, and we need to have segregated bike lanes that connect and allow us to safely go around the entire city without having to mess with cars and pedestrians. It's too dangerous in Waterloo to ride a bike. Putting bike lines on the road does not solve the problem. We need a full, connected, segregated bike infrastructure.
Well, I also believe that it's not particularly safe to ride a bicycle in Waterloo, or any other big city for that matter. Segregated bike lanes are one potential answer. They are very expensive, and we need to get the best deal for the taxpayer dollar, so we need to look at that very carefully. I think another part of it is education for the cyclist itself. I know this is a controversial subject in many quarters. People are sometimes upset with the way cyclists ignore the rules of the road and put themselves at risk. So it's a two-pronged approach. We need to educate the cyclists, and we need to find a way to make the roadways safer for them.
So in my opinion, I don't think the main problem is setting bikes down University Street or down King Street. I think we should actually be diverting the bikes down side roads or down paths and trails that we can make alongside those areas. The big issue is, even with protected bike lanes, you're really not going to be that safe. The biggest areas of problems are merger lanes, which you can't protect those because at the end of the day it has to be open for the cars to merge through, or in areas where people are riding on sidewalks. So if we actually increase our back end paths, make the Iron Horse Trail better, have better paved, maintained, and trails that actually go somewhere instead of just to a dead end, we'll actually be able to divert the bike traffic away from the car traffic, and that's probably the best way to keep everybody safe and keep traffic flowing without actual injury. And in terms of affordability, it's probably the best option Waterloo has in terms of our deficit.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Whenever I'm out biking, some of the streets that I avoid are the ones right around the University of Waterloo. It's just so challenging. Just a year and a half ago, there was a person killed by a car biking on University Ave, right around here. It is very dangerous. And then resorting to sidewalks isn't an option because that makes it dangerous for the pedestrians. So working out segregated bike lanes is the key thing. Having multi-use trails, having multi-use paths, and making sure they're connected and well lit at night, because I do understand that as students, you're here till 10 o'clock at night or later, and you need a safe way to get home.
Thank you. We will now be opening the debate. 5 minutes.
So my big question for Erica and Dave is, you guys want to add segregated bike lanes. The City of Hamilton just did this, and the cost was $400,000 per kilometer.
Okay, the City of Hamilton does not have the ratio of students to residents that Waterloo has.
But the question's about the money, not the amount of...
Well, the money...
How are we going to pay for it?
We have a responsibility to our residents. The job of the city is to provide services, maintenance, infrastructure that the residents require. When we are looking at fatalities on an annual basis of pedestrians and cyclists, the value of every dollar spent on a segregated bike lane system is justified. My vision...
Absolutely, though. But the problem is,
Rami,
at the end of the day,
please
we
let
have
me
to
finish.
be able to pay for it. And we don't have the money now to cover our $250 million infrastructure deficit that we currently have. So adding more deficit doesn't make money magically appear. We're not going to become 400,000 per kilometer more efficient. We have to actually push to do something that we can afford.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't have the money. That's the problem. So you can make any promise you want. Whether or not you're actually going to do it, that's the issue that really matters.
The City of Kitchener is putting in segregated bike lanes on Homer Watson Boulevard, even though the businesses down there are firmly against it. It's going to cost $6 million to do that along Homer Watson Boulevard. And we're not sure that it's really going to accomplish what they set out to make the cyclists safer. So I believe I would agree with Rami on this. We have to do a cost-benefit analysis. We want our cyclists to be safe, but we don't want our taxpayers to be saddled with huge bills for something they can't afford either. So
70 years ago, they would have made the same argument, though, about gravel roads. We already have gravel roads. Why do we need to actually pave them? And the thing is, we need to be able to move people through transit, walking, cycling, cars. We need to embrace all of them and making sure that all of these methods of transportation are safe, because as we all know, walking and cycling are the most healthy and contribute the least to global warming. And those
The
are the
issue
kinds
is,
of
though,
things
I'm
that are
not
important.
against building segregated bike lanes. I do think we will get to the point that we need them. Right now, Stats Canada says only 1.1% of people in the municipality is going to use it. My question for you guys is, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, if we follow your reasoning, we would not be getting light rail transit. We
well,
would
let's
not
hope we
be...
don't.
But light rail transit, we're getting funding. We've already saved.
Okay, you've asked me a question, Rami.
not answering the
The
question.
decent thing is to let me answer it. The way smart cities of the future are
The
developing,
question's where is the money coming from, not how are we doing it. It's
and I will
where.
get to that, is to provide transportation options. If you build it, they will come.
We're not
My
building a
vision
baseball
of the,
field.
excuse me, my vision of the future is for Waterloo to be a premier, trend-setting city where tourists come by the tens of thousands over the summer, spring, and fall months, because they can take a tour of our entire city on our segregated bike lanes. That is the way of the future. They will come. I got my driver's license at the age of 30. I was a cyclist. I can tell you now, I would love to ride my bike to work. I can't because I don't feel safe. The system is broken. We have a budget. We need to spend our money wisely. Spending it on safety, which is what I'm suggesting with segregated bike lanes, is a top priority. And to put an unconnected strip on Manitou Drive that doesn't connect to anything, I say is not smart. If we do it comprehensively, so we can go door to door safely on our bikes. That's the vision. It will be greatly utilized.
Erica,
It is an
it's a great
investment.
vision, and no one's disagreeing with that. The question, again, is how are we going to pay for it? Not what do you think we need to do, what your vision is. It's, I agree that segregated bike lanes are the future. It's where we're going to go. But we have a $250 million deficit that we can't afford as it is. We have LRT, which we're struggling to convince people is worth our money, and we haven't even pushed that through yet. How are we going to pay $400,000 per kilometer when we can't afford our current problems? That was the question, not what your vision is.
The key is to keep in mind that we have a $30 million capital budget just within the city of Waterloo, and we need to be able to, as we're redoing King Street and other places like that, we have to think for the future, because we're putting in infrastructure that's going to last 25, 35 years. If we don't do it now, it's going to be in 2050 when the next time we can consider segregated bike lanes on King Street.
Well,
we must look at it now.
King Street's a regional road, so it's the region that's actually planning on putting segregated bike lanes in, not the city of Waterloo. But nonetheless, we can't fight the region on that one. But I agree with Rami.
Listen, it's not the spirit of innovation and the future
Thank
to
you,
say
candidates.
that.
Sorry.
Oh.
The 5 minutes of opening debate have now ended.
Oh, thank you.
We will be moving to a half-a-minute closing statement for each candidate, and we'll start with Dave.
Well, I think Rami and I are in agreement on this one. We have to be able to pay for whatever services that we put in. The taxpayer is already overburdened in many ways. If we get the LRT, which I hope we don't, it's going to make a huge impact on the taxpayer. And I think if you start putting in segregated bike lanes, it's going to make an even bigger impact on the taxpayer. Now, I have no reason to suspect that we shouldn't go ahead and make sure that cyclists are safe. We want them to be safe, but we have to do it in a cost-effective manner as well. So I think I'd be a little bit reluctant to go and spend $400,000 a kilometer on segregated bike lanes at this point in time.
So in my stance for segregated bike lanes, I do think we are going to get there, and I do think it's our future. I don't think King Street's the right road for it to go down because it's not a very safe street to begin with. You have a lot of pedestrians, a lot of traffic, a lot of side roads. So odds are we're going to end up putting them on streets like Caroline or on streets like Regina. And those streets we're not working on right now. Fact of the matter is, nobody here was able to answer how they're going to pay for it. They're just saying that they have a vision. And visions are great. We all have them. There's a lot of things I want to do as well. But we have to be able to pay for it. And unless they can answer those questions for you, odds are they're just making empty promises. And you're all University of Waterloo students. You could probably realize that.
As I mentioned earlier, there's a $30 million annual budget for construction within the city of Waterloo, a larger one within the region. As we are continuously doing construction, number one, that's important. Number two is we seem to be overly focused on segregated bike lanes. As I mentioned in the earlier part, there's walking, there's multi-use trails, there's other solutions to ensure that cycling is safe, for example, through Waterloo Park, which do not require a segregated bike lane. Lots of options to consider, lots of things to make us healthier.
Thank you.
Paying for it is a matter of budgeting. As your mayor, I assure you that segregated bike lanes is a priority when I look at budgeting. That's how we pay for it. We put it as an important priority item, which I do.
We will move on to the third question.
So we've heard just a little bit about the LRT recently. So what we'd like to hear is what do you want to see with the LRT going forward right now?
So we're all pretty clear on our stances here. 3 of us are for it, 1 of us is against. Nothing to argue there. Where we differ is how we see it coming forward. In my personal belief, some people are saying that it's a done deal. We're good to go. Everything's ready, set and ready to go. I think there's a lot of work we have to do. And the way we have to do this is by driving ridership now. We need to get bus intervals down to 15 minutes. That's how long people are willing to wait for a bus. They're not going to wait half an hour, 45 minutes. So if you can't take the bus to get to the LRT, you're also not going to take the LRT. So we've got to start fixing stuff now so that when LRT gets here, we're ready to go for it.
We have an awesome community here. Adding the ION as a rapid transit or a light rail transit system here within the city of Waterloo, the region of Waterloo, will set us apart from all North American cities. We have a strong educational system here. We have jobs here. We need to attract more companies here. We will be one of the premier cities within North America if we continue on the path of getting ION to its full potential.
A show of hands, how many people here have a driver's license? Show of hands, who doesn't have a driver's license? Okay, so this is an unusual ratio. The understanding is that students, young people, are looking for transit. If we want to attract the bright, brilliant minds and the talent, we need to have transportation infrastructure that does not include cars. We need to give you that option. We're a city of the future. We're planning for the future. The LRT is step one.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
We will now be opening the floor.
Gee whiz, I thought that you weren't going to give the guy who's against it a chance to say so. Okay, first of all, I am very much in favor of better transit. But every study that was done before the LRT was approved indicated that for a city of this size, with this population density, with the number of people we have working downtown, bus rapid transit was a better option. The LRT, or the ION, is not rapid, and one of the main reasons for having it is to have intensification in the uptown area and not necessarily to move people. There are so many reasons why I think this is a bad deal that during the 5 minutes I think we'll have a chance to argue a bit.
Thank you, Dave. We will now be moving to the 5 minutes of opening debate on this issue.
On the LRT? The LRT, in my opinion, is the start. Can you hear me? Okay, is the start of our plan for the future. It is the backbone. The key to having a successful LRT route is to be able to connect it out to all our neighboring communities and to have sufficient connectivity so that the ridership goes way up. If the LRT is in isolation and it's not connected to everywhere where people like to work and play and go for entertainment, it will not be a success. So our challenge ahead is connectivity. We can do that by listening to the neighborhoods that need it, that are considering using the bus system and the light rail system. Very much, we need to be the city of the future. All those cities have heavy reliance on public transit. It's a lifestyle that is about the future.
I agree. I'm all for public transit. I'm all for good. I mean, we need better buses. But you know, we can put in rapid buses for less than half the cost of this LRT. A new bus costs $500,000. We could buy a lot of buses for $800 million. So if you have buses available that leave every 10 or 15 minutes and follow routes that are used, you're going to have people moved around from place to place in an efficient manner. And they're not going to be restricted. If you have an accident near the tracks, the LRT stops dead. If you have an ice storm, the overhead wires that drive the thing come down, and it stops dead. The LRT is a bad investment with a bad route, and it's going to cost the taxpayer a whole lot of money. And some of the things that I've heard, well, if we don't have the LRT, we'll lose government funding. Not true. I have it in writing. The government funding is still there, up to 1/3 from the feds, 1/3 from the province, regardless of which system we choose. The amounts may be different, but they'll still finance up to 1/3 of whatever transit system we choose.
The big issue with LRT, though, is not necessarily what we have now. The idea is it's going to connect us to Toronto with the GO train, and once that all starts going, it comes down to capacity. A bus isn't going to hold the same amount of capacity as the LRT will. LRT is about 200 people on the single train versus about what you guys have all been on a GRT bus here. It can barely fit about 75 people. So that's the idea of LRT. Right now, not that useful, sure. I'm not going to use it myself, I'll be honest about it. But your generation, the next generation, the generation after, they will. And once we get that connection with Toronto, that is the key to success, is driving our ridership to prove that we will get that connection with Toronto, to prove we need two-way GO every day and all day. And once we get that going and the transportation back and forth and the population grows by the estimated 250,000 people Waterloo is supposed to get, that's when LRT is going to prove where its success was and what the future vision for the region of Waterloo was. And that's the key.
The comfort and reliability of a LRT system versus a bus system is undeniable. And when I'm talking to students, I'm hearing things like, of the affordability of housing. There's not a lot of affordable housing choices within the realm of the University of Waterloo. But imagine just a few stops away where you'll be able to go and get housing that isn't any longer available here, homes and things like that. at an affordable rate, be able to use your GRT pass to get to school, to get off at the Davis Center, to walk here. That now changes things. You'll be able to actually work on the LRT as you're coming to school to study, and it'll give you a lot more affordable housing choices for the students in this room and forever.
LRT won't get you affordable housing.
Yeah, I don't know where
it's
that's
going to prove
coming
that
from.
housing costs around the whole line are going to go up. But in terms of building the community and everything, that's
It
where
builds
LRT
choice. Without the undeniable, it will bring choice to the students, and choice and
our bus
supply and
lines give
demand
them
will
the
bring
same
that.
amount of connection already.
Efficient transit will bring choice without having to spend money on putting down tracks. If you recall, or you won't recall, I don't even recall, but we took the tracks up in 1946. We had a streetcar system in Kitchener-Waterloo. They decided it wasn't working well. They stopped using it, went to buses, trolley buses, and then diesel buses, and now hybrids. So we've been down that LRT route before. We've had streetcars. They didn't work. They're not going to work this time. We won't get the ridership. It will not drive development like they say it will, and it's just going to end up costing every taxpayer a whole bunch of money. And not just your parents, but you guys and your kids and your grandkids will be paying for this thing years and years from now. So it's a bad deal for the taxpayer. It doesn't support by the numbers. Do the research and look at what LRTs are doing in other cities in the U.S. The ridership is around 1 to 2%, and they're forecasting 12% here in the region. I'm not sure what planet these counselors came on from, but they're not going to get 12% ridership.
One big difference between us and those cities is our connectivity to Toronto that we're working on and the 50,000 students we have. There are almost no other cities in Ontario, let alone Canada, that have 50,000 students come in annually and take up this much of a population in a city. So that you can't really compare apples to oranges. They're two separate
Thank you,
topics.
candidates. We will now move to a half-minute closing statement from each candidate, starting with Rami Saeed.
So, as I said earlier, 3 of us are for, 1 of us is against. In terms of where we want to move it forward, we all kind of agree it's about the connectivity. The future goal of our region and the city as itself is that connection with Toronto, building that super cluster, which many of you guys are going to take advantage of in terms of working here and working in Toronto and living one place or the other. And it's all about growing it from here on out and building that option for transportation.
I have a 3-point plan in order to make the ION successful, and that's something that I want to bring to the community to assure we preserve our businesses, to minimize the construction impact, we make sure that we drive ridership, and above all, contain the cost without adding extras to it. Thank you.
Look, it comes down to this. If you want a 20th century mayor with 20th century solutions, you don't vote for me. If you want the city of the future, 21st century solutions, catching up with the rest of the world on successful city plans, vote for me. LRT is the new way to do it. We have to think differently. We have to compete globally. We cannot do that with the backward thinking of saying, no, we don't want to be different. We don't want to do anything different. We want to keep with the buses. We have to look to the future.
Erica. Thank you.
Like, I think being different is great. I think that high tech is great. I think high tech solutions to problems are great. I think something that was started in 1895 and stopped in 1946 and now is trying to be revived again, a fancy streetcar, is not great. It's not the way of the future. If we had a elevated railway, a monorail that went right down King Street, I might be able to support something like that. It would be rapid, it would be cool, it would bring people to the city. This LRT is a bad plan with a bad route, with a bad costing. It's going to cost us a whole lot of money, and it will not work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We'll move on to the next question.
So our next question is still around transportation. What we'd like to know is, in the coming years, what type of transportation expansions would you like to see in the city?
Who are you starting with?
For transportation, it's not 15 seconds already, is it? For upcoming transportation options, certainly the focus of mine during the next term, the mayor's here for 4 years, the things I want to focus on is the ION, making sure that's successful because that's our major construction project here. So I want to make sure that that comes in on time, on budget, best chance for success, and drive success for that. Other than that, alternative transportation, including the walkability and cyclability of our community, is very important to me.
My view of transportation is that all forms are equally important. Cars, bikes, pedestrian are equally important and are equally weighted in our commitment of infrastructure. Cars are no more a serious option for people than bikes, and we have to respect that. That's what the community is telling us. That's what the residents want, and therefore that is the city's obligation.
Well, I think if we're looking at public transportation options, I mean, obviously we're a car-oriented society, and that's not going to change for a long time. 1 in 6 jobs depends on the car industry, including my friend here who has a car-related business. So cars are still going to be a big part of it, but we need to make sure that people can get around the city in other ways. And I think efficient bus transportation will do the job for the near future. We're too small to be looking at an LRT at this point in time. In the future, maybe, but right now our population will not support it. Thank you.
So as stated earlier, first step I think is we got to increase our Grand River Transit buses, make it more frequent so people actually want to use it. If we can't build that up, LRT is going to fail and everything else around it will. So right there and then, let's get people actually using the buses and make it readily available. When it comes to transportation such as bikes and walking, one big issue is our population is a very young population or a very old population. Our generation in the middle, we're kind of the smaller demographic of everybody. So looking at things such as expanding sidewalks to make it more accessible to everybody to share and use is one big step. And other items such as back-end trails and pathways and bike routes that go on side streets or through back-end entries is the best way to move forward. Open debate.
Now we will now move to the 5 minutes of opening debate on this issue.
One thing we didn't get a chance to talk about in the opening statements that I think is very important is the inter-regional transportation. In other words, all-day, two-way GO service. That's something when I was vice chair of Communitech we really struggled with. We want to bring a lot of people who want to go to Toronto for business, or they want to, their workers in Toronto want to come here to KW to work, that we need a frequent service. Today we only have two GO trains out in the morning, two GO trains home at night, 5 days a week. We need it to be all day, two-way, convenient and easy for everyone to use. And I want to make sure that I use my lobbying background to ensure that the provincial government delivers that in a timely manner.
I was actually at a conference with Kathleen Wynne the other day, and she already said that it's coming, it's on the way, they're already pushing forward. It's part of the provincial plan. It actually has something to do with the mayor of Waterloo. We can go and talk to them and try to push it forward, but we're not the ones that are going to make it happen. It's going to be the province and working with them.
I beg to differ. It has a lot to do
So
with
you don't
the mayor
think it's going to happen unless you win mayor? You don't think Kathleen Wynne's going to follow through? You don't think they're already pushing this forward? She's already said over the next couple of years we're adding more and more buses?
Every mayor in the province of Ontario will be lobbying for their own behalf. We need to make sure we have a mayor here who's experienced in lobbying to make sure that we keep that as a priority for the province of Ontario, because they're facing a lot of pressures, just as students are facing pressures with tuition and housing and that. The province of Ontario is facing pressures. We need to make sure that they deliver this as soon as possible, because we are one of the premier cities in Ontario, and we need to make sure that we keep up that pressure so that
Absolutely, and the best way to do it is to prove our need, and we actually all of us kind of already agree here that we got to show the need for transportation.
Yep.
So that's not an issue. At the end of the day, no matter which one of us is your mayor, our objective is going to be the same thing. Work for the province, work for the federal government to make things happen, and it's all about collaboration and showing the need. It's all about proof. That's what the government looks for when you go to the provincial and federal level. They want to show you have the ridership, you have the people commuting back and forth, and that you're actually going to use the system.
All day two-way GO service is a great concept, except that the GO trains now are really slow. It's about an hour and 45 minutes to Toronto. And, you know, about 100, 110, 120, 130 people use it from this area every day. More people come out of Cambridge on GO, or would if we had a GO train. More people go to Toronto from Cambridge than they do from Kitchener and Waterloo combined. GO train service isn't the ultimate answer. High-speed rail is the only real answer. If you could get on a train here in Kitchener and get off in Union Station or at the Toronto Airport in under an hour, that would be something worth having.
That's already part of the provincial plan as well. If any of you guys have been following the headlines, they just bought 54 kilometers of tracks on the other side of the 401, which separate us from Hamilton and Mississauga's rail line, so that we can go faster.
He's right.
It becomes more on our own. And these are things that are already happening. The province is already pushing for it. We've already purchased the track. So it's, no matter who wins here, we're all going to be pushing the same agenda. It's not going to be because I won mayor, now we're getting it. This is already happening.
So what you're saying is the difference will be my experience having lobbied the government for 10 years.
Absolutely not. It's going to come down to facts and information.
We all know what people think of government lobbyists, don't we?
Go Government lobbyists don't generally get everything done properly. It's all about working with the system and showing the facts, and the number is already there. The province is already pushing for it.
The Premier's already promised high-speed trains, and I believe there's a bridge here in town that they didn't even think about that when they decided how to build the bridge for the LRT.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be the region lobbying for it as well. It's not going to be the city
yeah.
of Waterloo. It's being built in Kitchener, technically. It's being built by the region with the region's funds and the region's help.
And the mayor's
so it's going to come down to
councillor.
Ken Sealing or whoever wins that,
Well,
whether it's
the
Jay
mayor's a
Issa,
regional
and it's
councillor.
going to come down to everybody else on the council. So any one of us here can get the same amount of information. We can get the same facts. We can gather the same data, and we can all work together and collaborate with regional council to get any agenda done.
I'm personal friends with most of the MPPs anyway, so I mean, the lobbying is one thing, friendship is something else. I'm well known in the community. I can get things done just like anybody else, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out. But everybody's right. Without high-speed service to Toronto, it doesn't work. Right now, the 130 people that use the GO train service are being subsidized by the taxpayer by over $100,000 a year each person. That's not a really good deal either. So we need to improve that. The LRT or any system that comes after the LRT, if we don't build it now, we'll build something in the future, will depend on the very, very fast transit between here and Toronto. The supercluster that's going to be formed between the region and Toronto will need that high speed.
Sorry, Dave. I'd like to give Erica a chance to jump into the debate a little bit.
Oh, I would jump in. What this community needs is a strong leader with a vision and an ability to get it done. That's what I offer.
Do we still have time? No.
Oh, we got 15 seconds left. Anything else? I think we all agree.
Yeah.
High-speed
High-speed rail trains, we're
high-speed
working
rail
on
to
it.
Toronto
It's
is
coming.
important.
What I'd like to point out, though, is that logistically what is holding Kitchener back with the two-way all day is the fact that we only have one double track going between here and Toronto. So as the authorities at GO Transit tell us, until we have a second double track, as much as they would like to put high speed and all day GO train, the train that leaves Kitchener to go to Toronto is on the same track that the second train would be on.
Which is why we just bought 54
we
kilometers
are
of
being
new
held
track.
back by one single track. So until we get that second track, we are very limited in what we can offer.
And we
These
can't
are
even-
provincially
Thank you, Candy.
mandated
Thank you.
issues.
Thank you.
There's
Thank you. The 5 minutes have ended.
Whoa,
Oh,
whoa,
thank
whoa.
you.
Hey, what's the matter, you?
Now we will move to a half-minute closing statement for each candidate.
Sorry, Erica?
The importance of a mayor is to be in touch with its own community, to hear, to listen to the community, to understand what the residents, and by residents I'm including students, what they need, and to service that need, and to advocate for that need. That's what a mayor does. That's my style. I've been a court advocate. I solve problems, and I lead people to the right decision. That's what I offer.
Well, I may not be a lobbyist, but I'm well connected with government circles, got a lot of personal friends who are MPPs. I ran as a candidate in the 2011 election, met a lot of people, went to caucus meetings with the other people who were already MPPs, so I know how government works. I know how to talk to these people, and I think we can get things done. I mean, the whole thing comes down to what we need and how are we going to get it. And high-speed rail to Toronto is probably a higher priority need than an LRT that goes from one shopping mall to another. So I would be advocating strongly for that. They don't even know what they're going to do with the
Thank you,
Margaret
Dave.
Avenue Bridge until they know how many tracks they need.
Question
Thank
got a
you,
little bit
Dave.
offhand. It was about transportation in general, not just the GO train. So just kind of pull it back, where I kind of want to push forward is getting that 15-minute interval for trains, buses going back and forth. All of us are here to push the GO train. It's all going to come down to showing the province, showing the federal government the facts of what are happening, which any of us can do. It's all about information. The government doesn't care who you are, what you do, or what your background is. They want the facts, because the facts is what drives change, and that's what drives them to do what they want to do. So all of us are here to provide that, and we all agree that the two-way GO is going to be the greatest thing to push us forward.
We talked about a lot of different transportation options here. Certainly, and as a mayor, you need to embrace them all. One that we missed is car sharing. That is something that's become popular over the past 5 years and will become more popular going forward. I think that the cost of owning a car, particularly for a young person, is very expensive, and we need to make sure that we have options for people, car shares around, so that people can choose different options, whether it be transit, GO train, walking, biking, or car share as well.
So the next question is on affordable housing, and it is, what do you like and what would you like to change about affordable housing?
Oh.
Affordable housing, that's one of the issues that has been identified as being a top priority issue. I think all of us would agree with that. Affordable housing, not just for students, but for permanent residents who have been here a long time who don't have high income levels. And so we need to find ways to attract developers to come to town to build affordable housing units, and so that the needs will be met. And part of the way to do that is to make it more attractive for these developers by eliminating red tape at City Hall that Rami had referred to, and also looking at our development charges, which have become really high and discouraging people.
Thank you.
So for low-income housing, there's actually it's a big animal, and there's a lot of things you have to tackle. One area I wanted to put focus on is helping seniors who are now on reduced incomes stay in their home. One big problem is they can't afford to live there, they leave their homes, and now they enter the affordable housing list. So it puts a bigger drain on the system. Another area is by ensuring that we don't end up with ghettos. A lot of affordable housing units, they all get built in one area, and that's a big problem. You have to diversify and make sure it's combined with everything. That's why I've tried to push forward having reduced development charges, giving a grant for development charges, or even allowing builders to build extra stories
Thank you, Ron.
with more housing. Thank you.
Affordable housing is a big issue within our community. It's been highlighted in the Waterloo Chronicle recently, and as I mentioned, I've heard from students where even it's a challenge at the student level. What I've suggested I will do is, if I become mayor, is to create a mayor's task force on affordable housing to bring together developers, to bring together all stakeholders, to see what we can do to incent the creation of more modest units that are affordable by everyone.
The only thing standing in the way of getting more affordable housing in the city of Waterloo is government policy. It's our bylaws, it's our development charges. Developers need to make this profitable to some extent. We are currently requiring all apartments, all housing to have parking spaces. We need to review how we do business. The developers have the answers. I have an 18-minute interview on my Facebook page. You just click on it. You can get my full story on what I think of the low-income housing issue.
We will now be moving to a 5-minute opening debate on this issue.
There we go. I have a number of friends who are developers who tell me that trying to do anything in Waterloo is almost impossible for them because of the red tape here. What's happening is a lot of these developers are going off-site. They're going out to some of the smaller communities in the region and building their subdivisions out there where they can get things done in a hurry and not have to pay the oppressive charges they pay here. So eliminating a lot of the red tape and getting rid of some of these development charges will not only give us better affordable housing options, but it will also give us better options for people who want to start up businesses, who want to build buildings for a new business. There are all kinds of things that would happen if we were able to streamline the City Hall process, and Rami's an expert at that. He has mentioned how it's much easier to get a business license in Kitchener than it is in Waterloo. That has to change. So as your mayor, I would make sure that that would become a priority.
When I first came to Waterloo in 1983, off-campus housing worked out to be about $125 per month for a room. Today, I know people are paying over on King Street $700 a month. That's a huge six-fold increase over a period of 30 years. A long period of time, but that's still an enormous increase. We need to make sure that the affordability of housing exists for students, and I know the Federation of Students and the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union are concerned about this as well, and that's something that I would like to cover in my mayor's task force.
So one of my questions that actually only goes out to Dave McDonald and Erica. Dave didn't really take a stance on much there. But how do we actually, so if you're going to reduce development charges, the problem that comes is that now it's reduced for luxury builders. It's reduced for everybody. So if it's reduced for everybody, what's to prevent just luxury builders to keep doing what they're doing? What's going to actually incentivize them to actually build low-income housing? Where I've kind of taken the strong port is let's keep our development charges where they are, because if that money doesn't come in from them, it comes from our taxpayers, and it actually will hit renters, because renters' rent will go up with higher taxes. So where I kind of took a stance is let's actually give grants. So with the grants, what happens is if someone's going to build low-income housing, we give them a grant to offset the development charges instead of just having a blanket policy that now no matter what you're building, whether it's a luxury building, low-income housing, or condos or anything like that, you're not paying the fees.
I'll turn the tables. How do you afford these grants?
Well, so if you actually look at the problem is that when we start building our own property houses and we actually start to develop it ourselves, it actually costs us more money in building. And the other thing I've taken a good stance
Rami,
on in terms of funding is the
you're
municipal land
mistaken.
transfer tax, which I'm the only one that said I would actually look at implementing, which will actually bring us in over $20 million per year or more from there. So that would actually offset those costs, and that's an actual plan of how I'm going to fund it. Not just saying, well, I'd like to, but I don't actually have that.
Okay.
It's not a tax on the city. We have
Rami,
250,000 people moving here. Let's let them invest in Waterloo instead of raising our property tax line.
Okay, first of all, development charges initially were aimed at suburban development. When the city opened up large areas of suburban land, and we had to provide all the services there that weren't connected at all. So we had to provide roads and sewers and gas lines and fire and police. That involved a big expense for the city. The plan for the future is intensifying medium density along the LRT route. We are building along a route that already has existing services. Now, I met actually with an official from the fire department today, and he was commenting how these really high rises, one Columbia and that chunk of high rises at the corner there, the fire were not consulted in the construction of those, and their needs to service those buildings have gone up exponentially.
So if the needs have gone up, why would we not have to have more development charges to increase that infrastructure?
Constructing medium density along intensification routes along LRT through the city, we already have the infrastructure we require.
But the
so
keyword
the
of
need for
intensification is
development
increasing
charges goes way down.
But it doesn't actually, because we still have to redo those sewer lines and those water lines. They're already not meeting our standard. So when we start building newer and bigger buildings, the need to increase that infrastructure goes up with the buildings as well. So there are still going to be costs there that if developments aren't paying for it, taxpayers are going to pay for it. The money has to
We're not going to zero, Rami. We're putting our development charges competitively with Kitchener and Cambridge.
No,
we're
well,
not suggesting down to zero. We have to be competitive with Kitchener and Cambridge, and right now we are not.
Thank you, candidates. We will now be moving to the half-minute closing statement on this issue, and we will start with Rami.
So I was saying throughout this discussion here, my big worry is that if we start blanketing everybody with lower development costs or anything of that matter, we're actually going to hurt the student market and the affordable housing even more. The big problem is when you have a blanket system, it covers everybody from luxury builders to everything else. So the incentive and the profit in luxury building goes up. So the best way to do it is to offer a grant or to offer incentives for the developers to want to build low-income housing instead of just covering everybody. Because when you actually give them an incentive, they might actually come and build it.
When you have a serious problem like affordable housing, the key thing there is to start with a strategy, start with leadership. And that's what I plan to do with the Mayor's Task Force, to take a look at the affordability of housing, to see what we can do with the developers and all other stakeholders, including students.
The developers have told us they're not asking for money. They don't need grants. They don't need more tax, any form of tax to subsidize their building. What the builders need to build affordable housing is for City Hall to get rid of its bureaucratic red tape. That's what I'm committed to do. And then the affordable housing will be built.
Well, I talked to a Waterloo City Councillor who said that the high development charges have essentially stopped development in the city of Waterloo for the past 2 years. So we need to look at that. And I absolutely agree that Erica is right about the red tape. We need to look at that as well. And as far as the LRT and development along the line, that's just going to push property values up, so affordable housing will be pushed further out into the suburbs. It is not going to be the solution for affordable housing at all.
Thank you. Our next question is around engagement. So other than social media, how would you further engage students in the city? We start with Jaworski.
So the question was on student engagement, and that's something that I've been doing through not only social media with my DJ Chalk Talks hashtag, where I have families get together and write with chalk and ask me questions that way just to bring about the discussion. But what I also want to do is ensure that I have a mentoring relationship with the Federation of Students, with the Laurier Students Union, a mayor to student leader engagement to ensure that we're all on the same track.
Problem with Waterloo City Hall is it operates in a silo. I don't work that way. I'm a collaborator. I believe in building strong partnerships. The answers are in the community. We have to listen to the university. We have to listen to the community leaders within the university, the student leaders. That's where the answers are, and that's where I'm going to go find them.
Well, my platform is built on accessibility. If you've got a problem, your student leaders have a problem, anybody has a problem, I want to be accessible. I want to be there to listen, to find out what that problem is, to find a way to solve it. Because the mayor does not live in an ivory tower. The mayor is out in the community, and the mayor is the face of the community. The mayor is the person who you should be able to feel comfortable with coming up and talking to. And I have built a career on being accessible, and I have built a career on being a man of the people. So that's how I plan to engage the students, other than the social media, which I do already use.
So same as City Hall is now, it already is pretty open door. If you want to go meet with Brenda, you can just go set an appointment and she'll meet with you pretty easily. I've done it myself. Where I want to see difference is actually bringing City Hall out into the community. And two things I propose. One of them is called a brown bag meeting. What it means is once a month, the councillor, the mayor, anybody in that area will go to an informal meeting and sit down and actually have a proper discussion. We invite you to City Hall, but unfortunately you get about 2 minutes to talk at a council meeting and you really can't accomplish much. So in bringing people out to the community, we'll actually allow a full, proper dialogue in which you'll actually get to say your concerns and actually hear feedback from other people as well as the councillor and go from there.
We will now be moving into the 5-minute open debate.
When I first launched my campaign for mayor, one of my first stops was to meet with the university presidents, because one thing I've seen, even as a student here, that you really become the UW and Laurier and Conestoga become cities within a city, and we can't have that. We need to make sure that as students we're able to get out there, to experience the uptown, to become more engaged. Once you become more engaged in your community, you become more understanding, and you want to become more involved in municipal politics. As I tell people, a mayor's job is to look after everything that you see out your window or your windshield. So the stuff that you see beyond the borders of the University of Waterloo, beyond the campus borders, are the responsibility of mayor, council, city, regional council, and you really need to be able to get engaged, take an interest in it, and if you feel you can make a difference, I think people will be inspired to do so.
And I think the Feds kind of made a really good point once we started here is about how to get people engaged. And they kind of are more engaged with you guys than we ever will be working at City Hall. And a couple of points they made, which I'm pretty sure all of us have sat down and discussed with them, is actually opening up the City Hall to you. So if you guys want to sit on a committee or a council, we'll find a way to make it happen. And this was something they presented to us. These aren't any of our organic ideas. And that's what it's all about, is working with the Feds and everything. And the idea was when you're away on co-op or you're away in the summer, being able to Skype into meetings. Most of the meetings are held one day a month, every month, or at most twice a month. So it's not hard for you guys to continue to be engaged, even if you're not in town. And those are ways that we can better communicate with our students, and that's kind of where we got to move forward. And that's where the brown bag idea comes in. When we actually sit down with our Feds, sit down with the students, we can take their ideas and make them realities.
I think the most important thing to start with, before we get into how we're going to engage the students after we're elected, is how to convince you guys to get out there and vote. Because historically, the student vote has been pretty low. The vote among the general population runs about 30% in municipal elections and around 50% in provincial and federal. Why is that? Why don't people get involved? Why don't they look at the issues? Why don't they check out, like you guys are here today to check out the issues, and that's great. How do we get students involved enough and caring enough that they actually come out and vote in a municipal election? That is the big question. Because if you don't care enough to vote, then you're not going to care what's going on in City Hall either. So you got to get involved right at the ground level. Check out the candidates like you're doing here today, then get out there, pick a candidate, and vote for the candidate that you think will do the best job for your interests and for the interest of your family.
I think the city, through the feds, has actually been doing a pretty good job at trying to get better engagement. It is going to take time. Right from year one, not everyone's going to be engaged. And if you look at the last election versus this election, the amount of students that voted, we're already increased from that, and we haven't even hit voting day yet. So it's going to take time. The feds are doing a good job. The city's trying to work with the feds and Laurier's and everybody as well to get that number up, and it's all about that progress, and every time election comes, getting more and more people engaged. And I think we're already on that track. It's just about keep doing what we're doing and keep pushing forward.
Thanks, Rami. I'd like to weigh in on that. I have an opinion about why people don't vote, students and residents alike. I mean, the turnout from the general population is not great either. I believe that the reason people do not bother to vote is that they've come to the conclusion that nobody is listening. Why should I bother? How many feel that we understand the issues? We know what the issues are. Our panel understands the issue. Our previous administration understands the issue. We know there's a problem with affordable housing. We know there's a problem with student housing. We know there's a problem with servicing you with buses. We know there's a problem with having safe roads. These are not new issues. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And we have to earn your respect. When you find a candidate who you believe is actually not just going to be all ears at election time, but is actually going to take these issues and do something about it, I believe our votership will go way up. And I think it's high time that we had politicians who came and listened and then used the time in office, their 4 years, to actually do something about it. And that's something we haven't seen in politics. It's something that has led to voter apathy and cynicism. That is not my way. I plan to fix these issues. I plan to do something about it, just like I've done for 22 years for people in the courts.
You also, I think, need to understand the role of a mayor. I've got some literature that explains it a little bit. But the mayor does not drive policy like a prime minister or a premier. The mayor has one vote on council. The mayor brings vision, the mayor brings direction, but the mayor does not have the power to enforce anything on his own. You need somebody who can work with the members of council, who can get along with the members of council, who can bring his vision to the council and make them understand what he wants to do.
Thank you. We will now be moving to a half-minute closing statement for this part of the debate. We're starting with Erica.
So continuing on the theme of what I was just saying, I think you need to challenge your candidates with not only their awareness of your issues, but what are they going to do about it, and what is their history to show that they are actually going to represent you and hear you and take that one step further. We need to have improvements with the way we do things. I have a very future-looking perspective on how we do transit, busing, all of that.
Thank you.
I think we all have social media. We all have our Facebook and Twitter going all the time. We have web pages where you can go and look at our platforms. But we also have phone numbers and emails. And we can be contacted. I've been answering emails daily. I've been answering all kinds of them about my platform and where do I stand on this issue and that issue. So if you've got questions for the candidates, any of us, feel free to ask us, and we will make the best effort to answer them. And, you know, we need to develop a relationship of trust with you and make it feel that you can trust us.
Thank you.
So the question was about how to engage students and get them more involved with politics. And credit where it's due, I think the Feds have been doing a great job. I think the city has been doing their best to kind of keep moving forward and doing it. And as I stated earlier, it is going to take time. It's not going to all happen in 1 year. We're not suddenly going to have 100% of students voting and engaged. And that's what we're working towards. And I think in meeting with the Feds, meeting with students, and continue that conversation in a less formal way that you can actually have a back and forth dialogue, we'll eventually hit a point that everybody is better engaged, better informed, and cares more and actually wants to get involved. And that's the key, is just keeping that conversation going.
Yeah. Earlier in the presentation, I mentioned about creating a mentoring relationship with the Students' Union and the Federation of Students to ensure that they have a strong relationship with the mayor. That's something that's important to me, something to have on a not just a once a year or once every term basis, but to ensure that we have it on an ongoing basis so that we have a good feeling for what's the sense of the 50,000 students that we have here within our city.
Thank you. We will now be moving to closing statements for the debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we'll start with Dave McDonald.
No more questions?
No more questions. That's
Wow,
the end of the
okay.
question.
Well, first of all, thanks for the invite to be here today. And it's really great to see that there are a few of you here that are engaged enough to come and sit for a couple of hours and listen to what we have to say, a bunch of politicians. I think that in my case, my position in the community for the past four and a half decades, you may not know who I am, you may be from out of town, but if you're a local, your parents and grandparents certainly know who I am. I can be the face of Waterloo, I can promote this city all across Southern Ontario, and I can do it anywhere else in the world as well because I work well with people. That's my big skill as a people person. And I would like to emphasize that I would be totally accessible to any of you, whether it's an individual basis or whether it's a student union basis or a Federation of Students president. I want to make sure that I've got an open door policy. I can listen to your issues and find out what they are and try and solve them. And I will also try and get the best deal for every taxpayer's dollar in the city of Waterloo and make sure that all that taxpayer money is well spent. I appreciate your all being here today. I just wish there was a way that we could get the students of this university to all come out and vote, but I'm assuming that all of you here are going to be voters in the next election. Thank you.
So thank you to the University of Waterloo Feds for actually hosting this and getting us all involved and getting everybody out here. Actually, not a bad turnout for what we were expecting, and I think it's really good that you guys are all actually engaged and actually paying attention. And through this debate, I think you've learned where we all kind of stand, what we believe, and the type of promises we're actually going to make, and the type of promises that we can actually maybe even fulfill, or if they're just an empty promise. Everything that we discussed about, whether I was for it or against, I was able to explain why or how I would fund it. And I think that's really important, because any of us can sit up here and give you 1,000 different promises of things we're going to do or things we want to do, but if we can't actually explain how it's going to happen, where the money's going to come from, or what the purpose of, it's just an empty promise and nothing's ever going to come of it. And I hope that through this discussion you've actually learned that I do have a good idea of where everything's going to come from. I do have future vision as well, but we also have to be realistic that some things just may not be happening now. And in my platform, I focus on management, whether it's focusing on how we spend our money, investing and continuing to grow our future through our LRT, through the two-way GO train and everything like that, and protection, which is our low-income housing, protecting our seniors and protecting first-time home buyers. At the end of the day, this city is your city. You guys all live here. You're here for at least 4 years, if not longer, many of you, if you're doing co-op 5. And the fact of the matter is you should be getting out there and voting. Your voices should be heard because municipal politics affects your day-to-day life. It's not governing the lands. It's not anything like that. It's the municipality, it's the local government, and it's what changes what you do here. So make sure you get out and vote. Whether it's for me or anybody else, just make sure you vote because it's really important. And if you do vote for me, I'd appreciate the vote, and I think it'd be a good vote cast. Thank you.
When I, back in when I graduated from University of Waterloo, a lot of things were different. As I mentioned, housing, $125 a month. Jobs were plentiful at the time, and we need to bring those back. And I also thought of another thing we might need to bring back. The bomb shelter happy birthday mug. This is my mug from my 2A term. I thought I'd bring it back here today. I'm not sure if they still give them out, but you used to get a happy birthday mug whenever you came into the bomb shelter on your birthday. There's a lot of things we need to bring back and ensure that we're embracing our students. Long ago, we had 20,000 students. Today, we have 50,000. We need to make sure that we embrace the diversity of our business world, our educational world, high-tech, manufacturing, all kinds of jobs, because those are the kinds of things that are going to get you to stay here. Without a job, you will not be able to stay in our community, and I want you to stay in our community because we are a top talent, very high interest place. I encourage you to learn more about my platform at davejaworski.ca, and I hope I can count on your vote on October 27th. Thank you all very much.
I'm always struck when I attend the university about the overwhelming power the students have. There's over 50,000 of you. That is well more than voted in the last election total. Students have a lot of power to influence the direction of the future, the kind of mayor they want. I encourage your friends to vote. All you need to do is prove your residence and have some ID on you, and you are entitled to vote here. Students, you have a big voice at election time. You may think nobody's listening. Show us with your vote. Show us who matters and who's engaged in the community. I encourage you to work hard, to graduate, to stay here. The sky is the limit for Waterloo. The only thing that's holding us back is politics. That is why I'm running. That is my motivation. I would like to see Waterloo the twinkliest star in our technology supercluster. I would like Waterloo to be a leader in the kind of community that offers lifestyle, health, safety, and desirability. I think we can do it here. Politics is what's holding us back, and that is why I'm running. That's what I'd like to change. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Keep talking. Keep us on your toes. Keep us accountable. You have that free, independent spirit, and I welcome that when I am your mayor. Please support me. Please vote for me on October 27th, and I will not let you down.
Thank you, candidates. That concludes our debate today. I'll hand it over to Stefan to some last remarks.
So I wanted to thank everybody, the candidates and those in the audience for coming. I just want to remind everybody, as all the candidates did, to go out and vote on October 27th. If you're in first year and living in residence, your polling location is in V1. Otherwise, you'll have to find your local polling location, which is on the City of Waterloo website. Otherwise, we do have a few minutes now, so I was hoping that we'd be able to do a little bit of mingling so that individual students would be able to ask some of the candidates questions. And thanks again.
Well, thank you. Come on, questions from the audience. We need to hear from you.
Sorry, I meant like just mingle as in like
mingle.
walking around.
Okay, all right. Hey, Seth, how are you?
If you think you don't agree on